Hi, everyone. Gee, hang on, wait a minute. Who wrote this? Let's try that again. G'day. I think that's better. We've got to maintain some Aussie stereotypes. So welcome to G'day from Azure Down Under. My name's JT. I'm your host for this session. And I work at Microsoft in Australia. And I'm part of a team that's got a really simple mission. Our mission is to help developers do more and be successful with Azure as their cloud platform. And so today we've got a pretty cool session for you. We've got some people from the local developer community right around Australia, and we're going to give them the chance to talk about some of the cool stuff that they've been doing. We want to keep this really interactive. So as an attendee, you'll get a chance to ask our guests why and how they built solutions they did, especially in relation to Azure, obviously. Now, before anything else, I want to acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands, for me in Melbourne, the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. Now, I want to quickly remind you, before we go too much further, about Microsoft's Code of Conduct, which we're going to see up on the screen now. It's really important that everyone participating in Build is respected and feels safe, and most importantly, has a great time. So I'll give you a few seconds to quickly read through that. Okay, thanks for doing that. I hope that you were speed readers. So a quick overview of what we've got planned for you today. First up, we've got Azadeh and Kat from Girl Geek Sydney, who are a community-run group focused on promoting and engaging women in technology in Sydney. They're going to cover their Geek Insights app, which has been a project that the Girl Geek community has been working on for a while. It's a community-built and published app, and they use this opportunity to learn more about building and publishing on Azure. So while it's been a learning exercise for them, though, the app itself is anything but a demo. It's actually pretty cool. What it lets users do is they can log into the Geek Insights app with their LinkedIn identity, and then they undertake a test that assesses their soft skills and identifies areas for focus and improvement. Details on how to join the community and contribute to Geek Insights or take the test will be shared later on, so make sure you hang around. Speaking of hanging around, here's the cool part. We're going to do a swag giveaway for our Australian attendees at the end of the session. So you've got to make sure you're here for the whole session to be able to win, because you're going to have to answer some questions. And I'm not going to give away any secrets about the content, but I will let you know that, like, just between us, we think the swag pack's pretty cool. For our international friends, sorry, no swag for you. However, if you've ever looked at a map of Australia, and I'm sure you have, you'll probably notice it's pretty big. We don't want to brag, but we're talking about 2,000 miles. That's for you, Seth Juarez. Thank you for yesterday. For the rest of us, that's about 3,200 kilometres of flying distance between Perth and Sydney. So you might be wondering, what do we do with all the space? Well, we fill it up with a vibrant tech ecosystem, of course. A big part of that for us is the Azure user group scene, which is thriving in many of our major cities. To celebrate those groups, we're really excited to be hosting a panel today. We'll have leads from the various Australian developer user groups, Australian Azure developer user groups. That's a mouthful. That's why I skipped it the first time. All of these guys spend their day jobs working on Azure. So in addition to talking about their local community, they'll also be taking some Azure developer questions if you've got them. Try not to make them too hard and stump anybody. And we'll have leads from Brisbane, Perth, Melbourne and Sydney joining us. So we're really looking forward to a wide range of topics and questions going on there. I think a little bit later on, we might also have a very special guest. We're pretty lucky to have him on board. People call him Mr. Serverless. I just call him Jeff. Jeff Holland is the Principal Program Manager for Azure Functions. He's a man who's arguably forgotten more about serverless than I'll ever know. So we're looking forward to having him be a part of this a little bit later on. Following on from that, question for you all. If you had a solution that you'd previously built that you could suddenly use to provide a great self-help service, this is harder than it looks. for people facing difficulties due to the economic changes in what we'll call the current climate. How do you stand something like that up in a matter of days? How do you get that up and running on your cloud platform? In our third session, we're going to be joined by Paul Cunningham as he talks about how his business did this with Claimy. It uses Q&A technology. It helps people find the information that they need right now, quickly and easily. And he stood it up on Azure very, very quickly. Now, final slot is the one that I'm most excited for. If you were watching the live stream yesterday, or if you've crossed paths with us at a live event in 2019, you've probably seen our self-playing Star Wars pinball machine. The short version of this, for those of you that haven't come across it, is it uses reinforcement learning to get better at playing pinball all on its own. So my teammate Simon and I are going to give you the lowdown on how it all hangs together, how it was built, what the nitty-gritty inner workings of it all are. So I think we're about ready to get started. Like I said before, we want this to be really interactive. We're all about community. That means all of you. And so if you've got a question at any time, you can use the Q&A window to type in your question, which our moderators will pass on to speakers. Remember, from the speed reading you did on the code of conduct, please make sure you adhere to that when you're posting your questions. If you're throwing inappropriate questions out, we're going to discard them. We might even have to give you the boot if you're being really naughty, but I know that you're all awesome, so that's not going to happen. And with that, enough of me, because we're sick of looking at my head. Please put your virtual hands together. I'm going to put my real hands together. And welcome Az and Kat from Girl Geek Sydney.
Okay.
Thanks, JT.
Thank you.
Let me share my... All right, Kat, you're ready to go.
I am ready to go, but I can't see your presentation.
Right.
All right, now I can see it.
All right, give me a second. Yeah, that looks better.
Yes, I think we're back on. Do you want me to keep going?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Perfect. All right, then let's get started. Good morning from Australia. My name is Kat and my fellow speaker is Asade. And as JT already introduced us, we are Girl Geek Sydney. And we are absolutely thrilled to be here this morning to run the first community section of Microsoft Build. And we're really appreciating that you guys joined us this morning and show some interest in the community and what we have been doing. We have 20 short minutes with you, and our agenda is quite tightly packed. So we're probably going to speed up a little. So the speed reading and the speed talking is probably going to continue. So I'm going to spend a few minutes with you to just quickly tell you or explain a little bit what Girl Geek Sydney is and what we are doing to get females into IT and how to keep them, or what we do to keep them there. And Asade, if you could go to the next slide, let me tell you a little bit about Girl Geek Sydney. Now, we have been around for nearly 10 years. We have a community that now has over 2,500 females in IT. We have a wide skill set and a wide range of ages. So we have all ages, really all career levels from junior up to senior. And we have different, capabilities from experience design up to software engineering. But what all of that keeps us together, or why we are so interested in everything, is our love for IT and technology. Now, what we're doing to engage with the community is through a lot of events. And if you could go to the next slide, I am just going to quickly introduce to you the 3 pillars of our community and the events that we are doing. So we have 3 main events. That is our monthly meetups, we have special events, and we have She Hacks. Now, our monthly meetups, they run every second Tuesday of the month, and we cover topics from DevOps, cloud computing, data and AI, machine learning, up to soft skills. Our meetups are super popular, so you need to get in nice and early if you would like to get a spot. They are free. And they're open to all genders, so you can join if you would like to. They usually are hosted by our partner organizations and companies that we work with, but with everything in those unprecedented times that we're living at the moment, we've taken them online. So the second pillar of events that we are running are special events, and that is everything from a happy hour at the Facebook offices in Sydney through to workshops, trainings, certifications. So again, we're posting our content on our social media. Keep out an eye for it if you would like to attend. The last event, and this is the event that we are most proud of, is She Hacks. She Hacks is our all-female hackathon that we are running annually. And if you could go to the next slide, you can see a little bit about She Hacks. She Hacks has been around for 8 years, so we're going to celebrate our 8th anniversary this year. We have growing every year. 8 years ago, we started with 60 participants who came and joined this hackathon, and last year we counted 150 attendees and numerous people on the wait list to get in. The biggest difference about this hackathon is that it's all about learning and not so much about winning. We are building cross-functional teams before the event and help them to develop an idea that solves a real-world problem within 12 hours. So it's 1.5 days that they need to come to a prototype, to an idea, to develop something. And then at the end of it, they get to present that in front of a panel of industry specialists. That event, like all of the events that we are running, is absolutely free for our attendees. And it's an absolutely amazing feeling to be in a room buzzing full of energy and full of talent. And this is also, like She Hacks is also the opportunity that we have each year to engage with our community on a greater scale. This is when Asset Day really see and try to analyze how we can help and support our community better, to so help and grow the talents that are in this room, to help them grow in their career. And we have identified 2 big needs of these people. It is, first of all, exposure and opportunity to develop technical skills. The people in the room want to learn new things. They want to grow in their career. And the second opportunity is personal development. And personal development, especially soft skills. Because in the modern world, it's not enough if you got all your technical skills down. You also need to be good in all the soft skills to really grow your career. And if you go to the next slide, this is when we identified that this is what we are going to focus on this year. This year, we are going to focus on debugging the career growth of our community. And we are at the moment developing tools to help with both of the needs. So the need of getting more technical experience, but also grow in soft skills. The first thing that we have been doing is established a virtual book club. Because Asade and myself, if you could go to the next slide, Asade. Because Asade and myself, we're also trying to debug our career growth, and we came across a lot of inspiration in people that have looked around that topic. For example, Louis P. Frankel, who is the best-selling author of the non-fiction books like Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office. So we really like that title of the book, that really got us. So we read that, and we're really, really inspired by it. And we thought, we need to get that to our community so they can learn from people who look into that topic. So what we've done, we have partnered with Audible, who are giving away audiobooks or free audiobooks every month to our community, so we can encourage our community to read these books, and once a month we are meeting and talking about the book. But this is only one way how we help them grow in their soft skills. The other way is through what JT alluded to at the beginning. It's our Insights app. And if you could go to the next slide, you could get a little bit of an insight of what we have prepared here. So the Girl Geek Insights app is a simple tool that is identifying your areas of improvement. At the moment, it's a simple questionnaire that you can see on the left-hand side that you are filling out, and at the end, the result is that it's going to tell you how you are scoring in the 7 categories that you're seeing in the middle of the page. So how you think, act, sound, look, respond, your brand, and if you can play the game. Our MVP that is live at the moment really rates you and gives you a score, but we have big goals to build this out, to not only show you the results, but also give you tips and tricks how you can improve your soft skills. And really, we want to help the people who run this to set a strategy for their career growth. But this front end is only one purpose of the Girl Geek Insights app. It is for you to identify and grow in your soft skills. But there's a second purpose, and that is to give exposure to learn new technical skills. And that's the part that Asade is going to walk you through right now. And if you want to try it, the link is on the screen.
Thanks, Kat. One of the main goals of Girls Geek Sydney is helping our members to grow in their career, to get senior and lead position in the industry. Based on our research and observation in the community, we realize that men and women in the workplace are treated differently. When it gets to promotion, getting more responsibilities, or getting hired. As you know, the classic way of growing in the career is you have 2 options. The one option is at your current job, you ask for more responsibilities and then you showcase your capabilities, and then the promotion comes after that, and then you can go higher in the career ladder. Or you can find another opportunity somewhere else that has more responsibilities, that it fulfills you and it helps you to grow in your career. But for females specifically, it's a bit harder and it's an unfair market at this stage. Since 2017, we started a strategic partnership with the startups and big corporates in Australia. We proactively invite them to our events, and we provide the networking opportunities for our members to meet these hiring managers, the HR teams of these organizations. We also have the Slack channels that our partners, our members can advertise their opening roles in our channel free and connect with our members directly. We also proactively introduce and refer the potential candidates to the engineering managers in our network. But changing bias is slow. And we want to unlock the potential of our members. We want to help them to grow in careers. Getting a senior software engineering position or tech lead positions or architect position for females is specifically very hard, and the process is very slow. And then we started thinking about how we can help our members better. Maybe we should look into the problem from the different angle. What if we create the opportunity of an experience? If our members are missing out because they can't showcase their past accomplishments, they can't showcase their experience, what if we provide that opportunity? What if we provide that experience? Instead of using the out-of-the-box tools for building the questionnaires, we decided to build a community tool by community members for the community. So we decided to build the Insights app in-house. We gathered a team of remote volunteers. We invited industry experts to lead the volunteers and mentor our volunteers to provide the experience that they need and to build the app. We started very small. We started to address the first and one of the issues that we are seeing in the community, and it's cross-entry. We picked 2 engineers. One of them was front-end engineer who wanted to start her career into the UX area. But she doesn't get the assignments in UX at her current role, although she has passed all the courses that are required and she has the knowledge, but she's missing out because she doesn't have experience. Another engineer that we are working with in this project is a senior software engineer who recently migrated to Australia. But in South Korea, she was working and she was responsible to building a software to test the memory stick. But in Australia, as you know, the market is different. The market is around using high-level languages and building the web application. And her knowledge in C++ didn't help her to find a position here in Australia. We started proactively introduce her to hiring managers, but the response that we were getting straight away was she doesn't have the experience. And we started playing the role of the potential. We were saying that the engineering fundamental doesn't change. She knows C++, she can easily pick up C#. What if you start giving her backend task and she can work on the backend part of the project, or she can work on the DevOps part of the project, and then she can pick up the front end and the frameworks that you're using in the project that you are building. And the answer was, you know what, she doesn't have the experience. We are not 100% sure. We don't think that she could learn at the job. And so that's what we said, that this is a good example to involve her. So we built the MVP of the project by these 2 engineers to make sure that they have the experience to showcase. They put it in their CV. Now they have the referral from the industry, well-known industry expert that they work with them to build this app. This app has been used by 2,500 of members to self-assess their soft skills. It's hosted on Azure. It's a React.js web application. We use Azure Functions for the LinkedIn authentication and save the test result into the MongoDB Atlas. We are having CI/CD pipelines with Azure DevOps. We followed all of the engineering fundamentals and industry standards, and we try to make sure that it's the experience that our members are getting. It's similar to experience that if they worked at the agency, to make sure that they are prepared for the work that for the next role or next opportunity that they get. And then, as you can see now, when we are introducing these 2 members and when referring to the hiring managers, we are positioning it. We are positioning it from the better angle. We are framing it better. We are saying that this member has the experience. This member has worked on a tool that has been used. So that's why we are so proud of what we achieved. A few weeks ago, we shared our vision with our members and the community. We want to grow this app. We want to allow our members to track their progress, to compare themselves with their peer, and also to compare themselves with one band ahead of them, so they can identify the opportunity areas so they can work on it. Also, at the moment, we have the holistic view of what community needs. So that's with the social book club and also inviting experts to address the areas that we think the community needs to work on. Since our announcement, 25 volunteers saw the benefits of joining this program and helping us to develop the next phase, which is super exciting. And we'd like to finish this presentation with 2 asks. First, if you are assessing a candidate from the less representative group from the community, don't just check them based on their past experience and their accomplishment. See that if they have the potential, check that if they have the knowledge, because maybe they have the knowledge, but no one gave them the opportunity to showcase what they know, or to use what they know in the community, in the project. So maybe you are the first person to give them the opportunity. Check that if they have a room to grow in your organization. Help us fight the bias. The second ask that we have is, if you're a hands-on tech lead or solution architect, and you love sharing your knowledge and you love working in a group, we love to have you in our program. There is a link on a page that it would be great that if you can join and register as lead. We will be in touch shortly. Thank you so much. And I will stop sharing now.
I think yesterday there were a few questions in the audience that we are supposed to answer. And I think JD is going to take over and ask us those questions.
Yeah, I think that was fantastic, first of all. Thank you very much. One of the questions, how do people get involved with this? I know Simon's going to put the links up in a moment. What sort of people are you looking for? Who do you want to connect with? Tell us a little bit more about how we can sort of pull everybody together to do awesome stuff.
Fair enough. So it's a really good question. Thank you for asking this. So if you want to get involved with our community, you can find us on all social media channels. So you can find us on Facebook, you can find us on Twitter, on LinkedIn. You know, we're across all those channels. If you want to get involved specifically with Girl Geek Insights and to help us develop this app, please get in touch via the link that Asset just shared on the slide. And what people we are looking for, at the moment, we are looking for people who want to skill up. So that could be in any area. My experience comes from the experience design. So we are looking for people who would like to improve the app from a experience design perspective. Asset is the techie behind the scenes, who is really skilling up people to develop this app. So we are looking for everyone who wants to skill up, but we're also looking for people who are seniors who would like to lead more junior people.
Fantastic. There was a technical question in there from Dave, who wants to know, why did you build the app the way that you did? Have you got a briefish answer to that?
Right, sure. So we wanted to make sure that our members have they get benefits and get the knowledge of using cloud computing and Azure and serverless and also DevOps pipelines. So to combine all of that in a short, in the MVP, we decided to pick this tech stack. Hopefully that's a short answer, but I can, definitely add me on LinkedIn and then we can chat about the architecture and why we picked specific details for each component of the project.
Fantastic. We'll jump to one final question, which is, what's the most common question that you get from hiring managers and partner organizations when you introduce the work that you're doing to them?
Okay, I can answer. So there are a few questions. The first question is, how can they involve? And how can they partnership with us, which is very good from the community aspect. We love, so when we get this, it really inspires us to see that and it's very heartwarming to see community and hiring managers are willing to help. But sometimes they ask that we have that, what do you need in 6 months time so we can help our members to skill up to the point that you need. And this is the area that it's hard because they can't predict what they need in 6 months time, because sometimes we don't have the candidates right now, but we see the potentials in the community, so we can provide and bring experts to skill up our members. But we need that planning ahead.
Fantastic.
Kat.
Well, thank you again, Azadeh and Kat. It was great having you here with us this morning. Everybody, make sure you check out the Geek Insights app. Have a look at the community site. I think Simon's posted the links up in the Q&A section for you all to go and have a look at. And if you want to get involved, they would absolutely love to hear from you. So,
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
The Girl Geek's just one of the amazing tech communities that we have here in Australia. For our next spot, we're going to go Australia-wide, though. So we've got Azure-focused developer communities based in Brisbane, Melbourne, Sydney, and Perth. And today we're going to be joined by some of the organisers from these groups, so they can share with us what their communities have been up to. Additionally, these individuals are all really passionate about what they do in the community, but they also work with Azure in their day jobs. So if you have an Azure developer question, like I said earlier, let's not get too mean and too obscure with those, but make sure you type those into the Q&A window. We can then ask them on your behalf. And we may also, I think Jeff may be on the line. If anybody's got a tricky serverless question for Jeff, you're more than welcome to throw those at him. And here we go. Welcome, everybody. First thing, I'm going to ask a question of my own, just to give us some context for today. Can you provide each of you provide the audience with a bit of a brief overview of who you are, where you're joining us from in Australia, and a brief overview of the community that you're representing today? We might start with Hass.
Sure. Morning, everyone. Morning from Australia. My name is Hass Al-Tayyar. I'm based in Melbourne, Australia. I lead the Melbourne Azure 9 user group. We've been running for about 4 years now. We have over 3,000 members, and we run a number of events, monthly, quarterly bootcamp events, and we have quite an engaged community. On my day job, I work as a director for VNext Consulting. So that's me.
Awesome, thanks, Hass. Let's jump over to Martin.
Good morning, everyone. From Perth, so I'm in Perth. So I'm a Microsoft Azure MVP and a regional director. I run the Perth Azure user group. We've got around about 1,500 members. We try and aim to run 2 events a month if we can, one for IT pros and one for devs. I'm originally from Kent, as you can tell from my accent. I'm not a native, but yeah. So I've been an organizer of the group for about 6 years. The group's been running for about 8 years in total, so well before. So when cloud computing was in its infancy as well. And I'd like to give a shout out actually to our other organisers as well. We have 2 other Azure MVPs, Samira Pereira and Amy Kapanik, and a couple of other people in the community as well, Hadwin Fung and a good friend of mine from Microsoft as well, actually, Rivaj Jumla, who was one of the original members and original organisers. So yes, that's me. We try and run a tight ship.
JT, I think you're on mute, mate.
So I am. Thank you, Matt. I was on mute. That's classic online meeting behaviour right there. Let's go north. Let's see if we can get a little bit of sunshine in our lives from Dan Toomey up in Queensland.
Yes. Well, welcome from Queensland. Today I'm calling from the Gold Coast, which is usually sunny, although today it's a bit cloudy and rainy. I work in Brisbane. I'm a senior tech lead at Deloitte, And I'm a co-organizer of the Brisbane Azure User Group, which has been in existence for, I think, 6 or 7 years now. I run the group with Damien Berry, and we have monthly meetups and great attendance and great involvement from the community. So we're really, really proud of that. I'm also a panelist on an online group called Integration Down Under, which is headed up by Bill Chestnut, who's been a long-term MVP. And there are 5 panelists on that, including Martin and myself. And we do sessions once a month that we broadcast in an Australian-friendly time on Thursday evenings. So feel free to tune into that. Just look for Integration Down Under if you're interested in Azure integration stuff. Thanks, that's me.
Wonderful, thanks, Dan. Let's jump back down to Sydney and have a quick chat with Sam.
Hello, good morning, everybody from Sydney. I'm Sam Alavi, and I'm representing the Azure Sydney user group. So I'm involved with this user group for over 5 years, and I started to join as one of the organizers team in the last couple of months, probably around 2 years. And we've got over 4,500 registered users in our group. I'm not quite sure how many active users we get. It's different time to time, but we try to cover a broad range of topics in our meetups. We have regular meetups every month in different tracks. We try to cover in dev, IT pros, and AI, which another fellow Arafat is here also. Can talk about more about the AI.
Fantastic. I think you've got another co-conspirator with you. We've got Arafat on the line from Sydney as well.
Yes, correct.
Good morning from Sydney, as Sam has echoed. So yes, this is Arafat Tehseen. I'm Microsoft MVP for AI. I am also a co-organizer for Azure Sydney User Group. We have about 4,500 members. My focus area on this user group is on the Azure AI side. So I'm quite passionate about empowering developers of any stack with applied AI skills, mainly, of course, with Azure AI.
Excellent, thank you. I think that's everybody. So I guess running these communities can be really hard, which is probably why I leave that to all of you and not me. What are some of the challenges that you guys experience, and sort of how have you worked to overcome those, or is it all just a perfect garden of roses running these meetups and communities? Tell us a little bit more about that. We'll jump over to Sam again, I think.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, as you mentioned, it may look easy, but time to time we find it very hard to running a tech community. So a couple of few challenges we always face. One of them is consistency. So it's quite hard to keep the community consistent and keep it going. And as I mentioned, we try to keep it with the regular monthly meetups. And for example, having a great content and bring up the great content from the community, because we are aiming to keep it from the community to community and having the community as speakers, MVP as speakers. So having the great content all the time can be one of the big challenges. One of the very, very serious challenges we are having now is the diversity and inclusion. As probably you can see, all the Azure leads here are very male dominant. So it's same within our community. So that's what we are trying to address within our community to make it more inclusive and address the diversity across all the tracks we have, IT pros, developers, and AI, and we encourage and every any non-bi people and female speaker, and we're trying to encourage and grab more. Probably these are my top 3.
Wonderful, thanks for sharing. over on the West Coast, Martin, what have you got anything to add to that? What sort of challenges do you face over in Perth?
Yeah, I guess because we're a little bit more remote, so we don't really get as much footfall of people coming through the city as other cities. So actually, other than the good shout out around the diversity and inclusivity, which we definitely do have a problem with, although we do have a very strong code of conduct to help make sure that our environment is safe for people to attend. The one we really struggle with is speakers. I mean, it's a pretty obvious one, really, but it is speakers. And I don't like nagging if I can help it, but I do have a very, very good set. Over the years, we've built up a good set of speakers who, I guess, very, very trusted people who I know will be able to present on some subjects at the drop of a hat. We also run lightning sessions to try and get new people through, and I'm active in the community to try and encourage that. And we always have a little bit of a networking event beforehand to try and line up the next few speakers. But the other one really is around attendance. So we regularly, I mean, we use the Microsoft offices and we're very thankful for that, and they can take 100 people, but we regularly get 70 or 80 people sign up and only 30 people, 40 people turn up for the actual event. So trying to get that group grown is also a bit of a challenge, and making sure that people do attend, because obviously it's a free event, so people can attend or decide not to attend. So they're all challenges.
Excellent. Dan, you mentioned a couple of different meetups and communities you're involved with. Can you tell us a little bit about challenges you've faced? What are you doing to solve them? How can people help? That sort of thing.
Sure. So the Azure user group is the second user group that I've been involved in running. The first one was the BizTalk user group, which I started back in 2005, I think, and that was really challenging because trying to find speakers for that, when you, especially back then, there were so few people who knew anything about BizTalk, and there was interest. There were a lot of people who signed up, but trying to get speakers was really challenging for that. But with the Azure user group, since I took that over, it's been fantastic, maybe because it's such a broad topic and encompasses so much, but we get great involvement from the community, and it's very rare that we have to struggle to find a speaker. And I'm really proud of the community and the people that step up and want to do that. So that's really helpful. As far as challenges go, I think Martin touched on it a little bit there when he talked about the fact that you may get like 70 people sign up for a meeting, but then 30 of them show up. And I think that's always a problem with free events. With boot camps, especially when we have to, we expect a lot of people, and we lay out money to plan for the food and stuff like that, and then you get a lot of people don't turn up. It's a bit of a pain. And there have been various solutions proposed for that, like maybe charging people a nominal fee, and then maybe giving them their money back and stuff. But the reality is that it's very complex to manage those things for a community when you start involving finances. And we also want to keep the groups open and make people feel welcome. So I'd say that's one of the challenges.
Yeah, right. So I think the moral here to everybody on this session and having a listen is, if you RSVP for a meetup, make sure you show up. We'll jump to this question. What sort of content is popular with your community? And can you give us an example of the best example that you've had presented of a talk or some content that's really popular? Let's jump. I'm all over the place. Let's jump back over to Perth and have a chat with Martin.
Yeah, I guess from the perspective of here, because we run both IT Pro and Dev sessions, I'll give you a view of both of those. We get a lot of good value and good attendance out of sessions that involve security, of course, because that's pretty important across the whole stack. But recently, actually, the ones that have been really popular have been around virtual networking and things like private link. So that ability to essentially have your services within your virtual network. So we recently had one that was really good around that. In terms of the dev space, I'm obviously going to say IoT is extremely popular because I'm an IoT person, but we also find a lot of value in things like bots, cognitive services, that sort of thing. not so much data. We already have a data and AI group in Perth and a machine learning group in Perth, which cover a lot of that sort of that deep dive in that area. But some of those services that are that more democratized view of data access and cognitive services themselves, they're always really well attended. And actually, just another one as well. We recently ran a hackathon, so there was a whole day on a Saturday, which was around environmental rehabilitation. So that was very popular. We had about 55, 60 people for that, and we're already being asked. Unfortunately, of course, within these COVID times, it's pretty hard. We're already being asked to run another version of that, so as we can evolve the project. So look out for that.
Awesome. We'll jump down back to my neck of the woods, down to Melbourne. Hass, question for you, mate. What's the best topic that you've had presented at Azure Nights?
Thanks, JT. That's actually a challenging one because we do
That's why I gave it to you, mate.
Quite, and like what Martin was saying, we do get a lot of really good speakers. I think we are very lucky. Some of them from the community, some of them from Microsoft. And we have quite a few people reaching to us for varying topics. There were quite a few topics regarding AI, Kubernetes, and one presentation that was regarding Azure Front Door. The presentation was done really nicely, and the community was very engaged. But yeah, it's really hard to pick a topic because on average we get about 150 or so people RSVPing, and then we will get between 70 and 100 people would show up. Martin, you might want to consider moving to Melbourne because we get a lot of speakers here.
After I possibly can.
Sounds like Dan's got plenty as well. We might be able to put them on a plane and send them over to Perth. We'll jump over to Arafat. Arafat in Sydney. What's the best topic you've seen presented, mate?
So yes, as Hass has mentioned, that it's very hard for me to pick up the single topic, but yes, I can pick up the area since I have a bias for bots and cognitive services. So I've seen a couple of trade topics presented around this area recently, and I think it's because of the nature of these services and the platform that they are not just restricted towards the stack, or they are not just restricted towards one framework. So that's why I think these services, especially around Azure AI, are growing day by day, and we are getting a lot of trade content.
Great. I think we've got a question here which is obvious now that we think about it. I'm going to jump to Sam for this one first. We've got no in-person events right now, and how are communities changing in the online world? What sort of things are different? What sort of things are you doing differently? Tell us a bit more about how that's all working out for you.
So is it for me?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah. So we have done one of our. First of all, yes, the situation is it's not the same now. So everybody is moving to virtual. So we were planning our virtual AI bootcamp in person when all of this has happened, and then we had to postpone it for the sake of safety of our community members. So then we planned to move our meetups to online, and recently in May we have started doing it. So there are good things and the challenges as well. So the good part of this is, of course, you get the audience from across the globe, different variety of content, and great speakers, great audience. But at the same time, you get the challenge of not meeting in person with people, and there's a charm of attending in-person events which is just not there yet. So I would say that it's good in a way, but it is also, we are also having some challenges on that, on the in-person front side.
Yeah, okay. Dan, you sort of mentioned that you run some online events already. How's the current situation affected and changed things for you?
Yes, well, actually, this month was the first virtual user group meeting that we had, that we ran using Microsoft Teams, and all things considered, it went really well. I mean, there's some learning curves. For example, I forgot to hit the record button on the meeting, so unfortunately, after I promised everybody there'd be recording, there wasn't. But I think it's got some challenges. You first of all, you have to get used to the tooling. You have to learn how to run live events with Teams, which can be tricky if you haven't done before. But one of the advantages I think about the online is that you can reach a broader community. So we're not actually confined to appealing to people just in the Brisbane area, and nor are we confined to just having speakers from that. So now I look at this as an opportunity to have an even broader pool of speakers available.
Excellent. And I relate to that because I've tuned into a few different communities in different states myself, which has been great because it's not always easy to hop up to Sydney or Queensland when you live in Melbourne just to go to a meetup one night.
Especially right now.
Yeah. Martin, anything to add to that? How's the online world affecting things in Perth?
Yeah, I don't really have much to add. I think we're discussing it at the moment. I think we haven't pushed the button just yet. We're as an organising committee, we've not got together more than once since this has all kicked off. But we are discussing it, and we're discussing it with a few presenters, of course, and this would be a great opportunity. We're right in the middle of build, right? So every year we always do an integrate wrap up and a build wrap up. Sorry, ignite wrap up and a build wrap up. So it'll be a great opportunity for us to actually do that as our first live event, our first virtual event. But as Dan says, the ability to reach all those other people and use our networks of people globally that we can use to say, okay, well, are you able to present Perth in a slightly tricky time zone for some people? That's the issue for getting people certainly from the US, but it's pretty good for most of Australia and Asia and not too bad for Europe. So yeah, we're looking forward to trying to do some virtual events.
Awesome. Next question is, what's the hardest part? We'll stay on you for this, Martin, just so we're avoiding too much camera switching. What's the hardest part of being a community organizer when it's not your day job? How do you balance work, home, community, all of those things together?
So I've been lucky enough, I guess, so I don't know if everybody has had the same experience, but I've been lucky enough to work in organisations that fully support that process. So, my previous day job, which was for an organisation called Insight, which is actually a global organisation. I was actually the Australia or ANZ community champion, I suppose, for want of a better word, inside the organisation. So the ability to then go out and have conversations and do what I needed to was kind of almost part of my day job, which was really, really good. Now, if you're outside of that, of course, then really, you just use whatever mechanism you can to keep in touch with people, whether that's catch up for a coffee and discuss what your next presentation topic is going to be, or even actually just use the networking sessions. We tend to try and have half an hour before a presentation, then half an hour after a presentation. To make sure that we can actually still communicate and contact people and get people enthusiastic about presenting or being involved in the community more broadly. But beyond that, really, it's just you find the time. It's not something that consumes 20 hours a week. So it's once you're involved and the thing's up and running and going, and then you find efficiencies and find time. I don't find it particularly challenging.
Great. Hass, have you got anything to add to that? How do you, because I know that you're involved, given you're Melbourne based, I know that you're involved with quite a few different bits and pieces. How do you balance it all?
Yeah, it's especially challenging for me because I have a young daughter who is less than a year old, and I just started my business. I was writing a book, so there were quite a few things at the same time. But it's not really all giving. I think it's a two-way channel. I think you give to the community, which feels really great, but then at the same time, you do get the support from the community as well. There are a lot of people who step up, and people reach out to me and say, okay, do you need help with this? Can we help with this user group, or can we help with this particular session? There is also the chance to partner and collaborate with other user groups. So what we have done before, we partnered with Geek She Hacks or Gale Geek Melbourne, and we ran a couple of sessions with them. We partnered with Microsoft Office 365 user group, and we ran a session together as another user group. So I think, and the other part of it, it does take a bit of time to contribute, but then at the same time, you get a lot back in return. You get the satisfaction that you are giving back to the community, but also it helps you grow your networking, your career. You get a lot of people, you meet a lot of people, and that's really, I think, a key part of the user group. I do think that there is value in having these online sessions, and we are going to run our next event in June in online. But I think a key part that we deliver and we make available for our members is the ability to have exposure and to connect with other people, to see what people are doing, and to engage and connect.
Yeah, great. Arafat, you are also a busy man. How do you keep everything in balance?
Yeah, so I'm also very fortunate that I'm working for an organization that supports this community contributions and community activities a lot, and they encourage me, and they never stop me to do that. So this is the part one, and the second part from the family front. Yes, I get supported by my family as well. So this is it gets really challenging, but there are people around you who are encouraging you to do all of this stuff. So it gets really exciting, especially from Microsoft front as well. We get a lot of support from the Microsoft side when it comes to hosting up any special events or arranging some meetups, even in the last minute. So yes, it's really great.
Fantastic. That's good, and I think that support piece has got to be key to helping you balance all this. If you've got people around you that understand, obviously that's really helpful. Next question for you is, if people are new to public speaking, or they might be junior devs, or they're just sort of getting started in the industry, do you have any advice for how they can get involved? What sort of advice would you give to people that are sort of brand new to this and want to be a part of this community?
So if they want to be a part of this community, they just want to come and sign up with us. That's it. If you are interested in learning more about Azure, you should. I think there are a lot of content, a lot of great content and great effort has been made by cloud advocates to MVPs to community leaders, and everyone, of course, is making a really great effort to give an exposure to this space. However, if you want to involve and if you want to learn, first of all, then there is something called Microsoft Learning Portal. I think that is the best source for that, and try to engage with people within the community. There are more, I would say, there are more good people than okayish people rather than bad people. So you just have to step up and come forward, and I think that there are people who are going to get you involved in the community.
Great, thank you. Dan, have you got any advice for people that might be looking to get started, either joining the community or maybe their first time speaking? What sort of struggles do you see those people have? What pearls of wisdom have you got to share with us on that?
Well, speaking, public speaking is definitely a very daunting thing. I remember when I got started and I'd stand up there and my knees would wobble and stuff, but of course with experience you get better. I would say for somebody to get started, we try to encourage people to come up and do short presentations. So instead of taking on doing an entire user group topic all at once, if they're not comfortable doing that, just get up and do a 10-minute presentation about one particular thing that they've done, maybe something interesting that they built at work that they can talk about, or technology that they've been fooling around with. And I think it helps too if they choose a topic that they're really passionate about. Because if you're really, really interested into it when you get up to speak and start talking about it, then that helps relax you a bit because you're kind of really immersed into that project and you're keen to share it with everyone else.
That's great advice.
Yeah, I agree with Dan on this one. So what I see in this is basically first find what's your passion and what you are more passionate about. If you want to enter into the public speaking, then find some community that encourage and are welcoming into to offer you to some lightning talks. So we do in our community. So if you are in Sydney or when we are up with our online platform, so we are welcoming for some lightning talk. That's a good start for that one. And the most important and the third part is seek for feedback after your lightning talk, and basically hear your feedback from other professionals in that space or from attendees. So those three elements could be very helpful.
Wonderful. I love a good lightning talk. It's much better than me sitting for 2 hours trying to maintain this, which is still mildly terrifying. I think we're going to start to wrap this up. Final question, out of the build announcements that you've seen, what's your top, top two, we'll keep it brief. Top two things you've seen at Build this year.
Top two for me, the code space in the GitHub. So it's one of the fantastic one, which basically you get the dev environment up and running in few seconds. And more than that is the private preview, which they're going to offer the full Visual Studio environment in the code space you're running in the browser rather than the Visual Studio code. That's the fantastic one. So far, that's the top one for me. And the serverless, improvement and new features adding to the serverless, especially in the Azure, is another pick for me.
Excellent. What about you, Hass?
My two favorite, there are quite a few really good announcements. My key two favorites are probably code spaces, because I think that would help us really improve the ability to contribute to projects, whether open source projects or corporate projects. In particular, I think it would help us a lot in streamlining and getting people to help with open source projects easily. So that I'm really excited about that one, code spaces. And the second one, which I think is going to be really important, is Synapse Analytics Link, which allows you to run analytics in real time on your operational data store, which I think is really cool.
That's very cool. That's going to be game changing, I think. Let's jump over to Martin. What have you seen that gets you excited, Martin?
Well, I was going to mention Synapse Link, so I'll choose something else. So the other thing that I saw was there's been a bunch of really great Cosmos DB announcements, and one of the ones I really enjoyed today was the ability to run C# notebooks actually within Data Explorer inside Cosmos DB. That has GitHub integration, so you can share those notebooks and get that great collaboration going. So essentially supercharging your Data Explorer experience. And of course, because I've mentioned IoT, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention an IoT one as well. The new digital twins definition language, I think it looks really, really good. The way that you can express digital representations of a physical world that actually stretches across time series insights, some of the IoT plug and play and IoT services, and a few other things. I think it just gives you that great holistic view of your IoT estate and the ability to push and move data around that estate. So I'm really excited to play with that.
Awesome. I'm going to have to get you to send me the link to that one because I have not watched that yet. Let's jump up to Dan. Tell us what you've seen that you like, Dan.
Well, being an integration specialist, that's naturally where my head is. So I'm really excited about the improvements to Event Grid, especially the partner topic support, which means that you can start capturing and easily wire in events from places other than Azure, like starting, for example, with Auth0. And Jeff Holland gave a great demo of that this morning. It was really nice to see that. And the other one, of course, is the improvements to logic apps and where they're going in that, to just making it a lot more robust, and also support for being able to run that in your own development environment, including upcoming designer support in Visual Studio Code, which just looks fantastic.
Yeah, cool. Arafat, we'll hand over to you to finish it out with your favorite announcements from Build so far.
Yes, so it was Bot Framework Composer. It has gone GA now. So apart from that, I think there was something which is HTTP Ripple. HTTP Ripple allows you to test your HTTP request locally. So it was really great. I think Jeff announced it during his demo. So yes, it was. They both are my favorite.
Awesome. And with that, we will close out. I want to thank all of you again for taking some time out of your morning. Thank you, Dan, Sam, Arafat, Hass, and very early start for Martin. But thank you all very much. We're going to post some links in the QA window now, so that if you want to check out any of the communities that these guys have talked about, if you want to get involved and help out, if you're a first-time speaker and want to get out there and do your first presentation, reach out. I'm sure any of these groups would absolutely love to have you. Thank you all very much again, and enjoy the rest of your build.
Thanks,
No
JT.
problem.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone, for hanging
Thanks,
out.
everyone.
Thank you.
Cheers.
All right, our next speaker is Paul Cunningham, and we met him he does some great work in Sydney through the Data Science and AI Association of Australia. Paul's really passionate about all things AI, and he hosts the Humans of AI podcast, which we'll throw a link up to a little later. And he also runs the Sydney Machine Learning Meetup. And today, Paul's going to join us to talk about a solution that he put together with his business to quickly stand up a service on Azure to help people in Australia who've been affected by the economic impacts of the last few months. So welcome, Paul. It's over to you to tell us a little bit more about the journey to delivering Claimy. It's all yours.
I appreciate that, JT. Is that coming through loud and clear?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for the introduction there, JT. Much appreciated. Yeah, so thanks for tuning in today, guys. So my talk today is titled The Genesis of Ideas. And specifically, we're going to be focusing in on the application we built roughly around 2 months ago titled Claimy, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Just a little bit about me. My name is Paul. JT's already provided quite a nice little intro there. But I'll be speaking a little bit more about myself in this talk. But just briefly, I'm the CEO of Core Intelligence Technologies. If you'd like to find me on Twitter, that's my handle here. And for a more sort of personal conversation, feel free to reach out via contact@coreintelligence.com.au. All right, so I guess if there's anything you take away from today's talk, I hope it's this. So this is a quote from Napoleon Hill. He is a famous author from the 1930s when the Great Depression was going on. And if there's anything you take away, it's this, that essentially when you go through like periods of strife, go through periods of difficulty, essentially most of the time you emerge stronger on the other side. And this is kind of what's happened to us at Core Intelligence, and I hope that you can sort of take away how you might be able to do this too from this talk. All right, so today's presentation is essentially broken up into 3 parts. The title of the talk is called The Genesis of Ideas, so we're going to talk a bit about where ideas come from. From there, we're going to jump into the application, which I mentioned at the start of the talk, called Claimy. And then again, talk a bit how we built this on Azure. Now, the point of all of this is I hope that you're going to be able to take away how you can sort of increase your ability to come up with new and better ideas too, and B, how you can then act on those ideas. I think both of those things are really important. All right, so let's sort of cut to the meat of all of this. Where do ideas come from? So society is kind of framed ideas like coming from these sort of 3 words frame how society views where ideas come from. So there's this idea of, like, I don't know, like a famous professor, you know, sitting down and then they get up and they bump their head on a door and come up with a flash of inspiration for the flux capacitor or whatever it might be. You know, there's also the idea of a famous Greek philosopher, I think his name is Archimedes, came up with the idea for buoyancy when he sat in a bathtub and realized that his volume displacement of the water is what led to the buoyancy, and therefore he realized why things float and had that eureka moment, that flash of inspiration. And then there's Thomas Edison, the light bulb man himself, who came up with the whole light bulb analogy. So this is kind of how society views where ideas come from. And I'm going to put forward today that this is not entirely the case. This is only a small sort of piece of the puzzle as to where ideas come from. And to answer the greater why, we sort of have to take a bit of a tangent, a bit of a detour into the field that I'm personally familiar with, which is artificial intelligence. So a little bit of more background around myself. Before being the CEO and founding Core Intelligence Technologies, I used to be a data scientist. And there's this technique from the data scientist world called deep learning. You may have heard of it. It's been quite popularized in the last 5 years or so. But us data scientists, we also like to refer to deep learning by a different name. We call it artificial neural networks. And for those of you who may not have seen one of these things before, this is kind of what it looks like. So you have nodes here, and they're connected to other nodes in the network. You have these connections, we like to call them edges, and essentially information is passed into all the nodes and comes out the other side to do something useful. The data scientists listening in right now, might be familiar with the ideas of forward propagation. So you propagate your information through the network, and then back propagation, where you back propagate the error to essentially fine tune the network to learn to do something useful, whether that's classifying an image of a dog or a cat or whatever. Now, the key thing to take away from all of this is this name here, artificial neural network. So what data scientists might be familiar with back prop, forward prop, and error propagation, but what they might not be familiar with is the fact that the network itself is essentially embedding the knowledge. The knowledge is in the connections themselves. And to sort of go forward with this idea, here we have an image of a neuron in a human brain, and it's connected to a whole bunch of different things. I'd like to propose today that, ideas aren't just the sort of flash of inspiration. They essentially emerge from networks. And the networks can be things such as connections, to other individuals that you might know. Connections could be connections to companies you may have worked for, or even like just have heard of. The connections could literally be your social network, like whether you're active on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, what have you. But the point is that sort of all these sort of connections you have are all sort of fused together and act as the ground for ideas to emerge. So okay, so we've talked a bit. We sort of framed this now a little bit, but you might be asking, okay, if ideas come from networks, then the question then becomes, where do networks come from? And specifically, you could ask, where do networks for ideas come from? Now, I promised you I'd talk a little bit about myself. Okay, so I'm the CEO of Core Intelligence Technologies. We are a full stack machine learning development company. So what that means is we pair full stack web application development with backend machine learning solutions. But the point of this is I never always used to be here. So to sort of walk you through this, and there's a point to all of this. In 2009, I started off, I graduated with a bachelor in electrical engineering, and I completed a thesis on neural networks and reinforcement learning back in 2009. So just to frame this, back then, artificial intelligence did not have the hype it has right now. And as a fresh graduate coming out of university, I was like, where are the jobs for this field? If you mentioned to someone that you did artificial intelligence, they kind of looked at you weird back then. So I decided to, I'd been studying for a very long time, so I entered the workforce and worked as an electrical engineer. But whilst I did this, the entire time I pretty much worked on artificial intelligence projects on the side, did projects for myself. And around 2014 actually is when the name data science really started to hit the mainstream media. So I thought to myself, wow, there's actually jobs in this field now. How do I do that? How do I enter the field? So based on the work that I did for my honors thesis, I went around and individually pitched to 6 different university professors. I went to them saying, hey, this is the work I did. This is what I'd like to do with it. And unfortunately, they weren't familiar with the architecture that I was working with, the type of neural networks called echo state networks. And so because of that, they rejected me 6 individual times. This is kind of the point of this whole story. Like, at this point, I could have just sort of said to myself, okay, well, obviously data science isn't for me, artificial intelligence. I'm just going to continue to be an electrical engineer. But instead of doing that, I was like, to hell with those guys. I am going to take massive action and train myself to be a data scientist. So over the course of roughly around 2 years, I did self-study on the side and taught myself all the little other extra pieces of knowledge that I did not yet know about in order to work as a data scientist. Finally getting my first job working for a company called Sigmoid One as a machine learning engineer. But I continued to take action. So in February 2017, I founded the Sydney Machine Learning Meetup, and it's now the largest machine learning focused meetup in the whole of Australia. Off the success of that, and after a lot of action, in December 2018, we founded the Data Science and AI Association of Australia, and then continued to take even more action, and that led to the founding of Core Intelligence Technologies. Okay, but so what is the point of this? What am I all trying to get to here? And that is through, if you want to sort of change your career, if you are currently doing one particular job and you want to move into a different career and achieve a goal, essentially, you have to take massive action. But via the result of taking massive action leads to these things, networks. So it takes time to build them, but by taking massive action is essentially one of the key ingredients required to build a network. So just to continue to keep framing this, what I refer to as a network here is not necessarily just a network of individuals. It's a network of people you've met, and also sort of key other things you've met along the way. So in this little sort of toy example here, our hero, she's learnt about TensorFlow, so that's a data science technology, AI technology. She's learnt about GitHub, which is anyone that's familiar with the open source community is a great place to learn about, again, other people's ideas, really. She's learned about like containerization and Docker for building microservices, if that's something she wants to do. And again, she's learned about a service provider, in this case, Azure, which can do many, many other things. And of course, make connections to friends. But what some of the other things on this diagram that are missing is she also could be connected to, say, Twitter or Facebook, and that again extends her network just beyond sort of this what's represented in this diagram. But how this then again relates back to the where ideas come from thing is that her sort of knowledge is embedded in the connections between all the different entities within this network. So these two individuals might have an idea, and then she sort of talks about to this guy about what that idea, and then we have sort of a blending, but you know, there's a different idea here. And there's a whole bunch of sort of knowledge that's stored in all these different connections, okay? That's kind of the key thing here. So the knowledge, the foundation, is stored within the connections of the network. And given the right market conditions, that is the sort of nudge to push someone over the edge to think of, boom, you know, a brand new idea that could sort of fit the market at the time. So there's a few things here. There's taking massive action to build the network. There's the idea that the knowledge itself is embedded within the network, and to build that network, you need to take massive action. And then the last thing is the market itself could sort of provides a nudge to make the flash, that thing of that concept of inspiration that we talked about at the start of this talk occur. All right, so I promised you I'd talk a little bit about this application which we developed called Claimy, and I'm not going to talk about what's happened over the last 2 to 3 months. I'm sure you're all aware of it. Like, there's been enough said about that. But just for the international people tuning in, at the start of March 2020, things were starting to get a bit crazy. And what the Australian government did in response to all of this is they issued an unprecedented broad spectrum of financial aid packages to both individuals and companies across the board to sort of reinvigorate the economy. However, at the same time, the Australian public, and you could argue the public abroad as well, was getting overloaded with information. So you had information with the virus coming in from all various sources, and then you had this information about the financial stimulus packages coming in, and it was hard to make sense of what to do to apply for it and whether you even qualified it or not. So the end result of all of this was that the general public and individuals didn't understand what was good for them to get financial stimulus as a result of all the noise. So how did we respond to this whole situation at CORE? Well, we sort of had a brainstorming session, and instead of sort of freaking out, we thought, like, how, with what like tools and technologies that we know about and assets that we have, how can we make even like 0.01% difference to sort of steer the Australian economy back on track? How can we positively impact the situation? So the sort of flash of inspiration that happened for me was when I was talking to my accountant, and he said, like, we could really use a tool that would help our clients, the accountant's clients, sort of navigate through all the information they need to know to apply for these financial stimulus things. And I thought to myself, hang on a moment. So it turned out that the previous 3 clients that we had worked for the last year, actually, we had built 3 separate products. One was for pet insurance, one was for cyber insurance, and another was for property development. But there was a key piece of a key feature for it, which we didn't even realize could essentially be a separate product. And we had built a question and answer engine for this, for both of those 3 clients. And the key insight was that we could quickly repurpose the question and answer engine to help Australians navigate through all this sort of noise to find the right financial stimulus that they qualify for. And again, you have this idea here that, like, what this image is trying to convey is that we had done some previous work, we had some previous knowledge of these other projects we had worked on, and then some new information was being fed into the network. The market conditions changed, and the idea of Claimy was essentially born. So just quickly walking through Claimy. So again, it's this tool to help Australians get the right financial stimulus package support, both for individuals and SMEs. We made heavy use of Azure to deliver Claimy. And the key thing I want to talk about here with regards to Azure is that for us speed to market was the most important thing, because you had so much information coming in. So it made sense to provide a tool that allowed all this information to be passed essentially neatly, effectively to individuals, to help them figure out what sort of stuff they needed to do to get that financial aid. So we chose virtual machines to do this because it was the fastest way of achieving this goal. And something that we're very proud of internally is we delivered this from the idea itself to a deployed app on the cloud in 2.5 weeks. So I think like we moved blazingly fast using Azure there. And just a couple of more sprint screens of what Claimy is mobile and web responsive, and individuals that usually land on this page. It helps to guide them through the questionnaire, whether they're individual, whether they're small to medium enterprise. We then ask them a couple of questions, and then based on the responses, tell them which sort of financial stimulus they are eligible for. And if you're on the the web version, it looks something like this. But sort of to sum this whole thing up, by taking massive action at core and building Claimy, we exposed ourselves to even new technologies. So here's some of the things that I didn't know about before building Claimy that I now know about. And if I was to build Claimy 2.0, I would use these things. So Azure load balancing, Azure application gateway, and the Azure app service. And these sort of things have further added to my knowledge network, and again have provided additional ground for new ideas to take form. And one of which is actually, by building Claimy, we think we've actually, again, moved forward and have sort of stumbled upon an even greater idea, which we've had talks with other clients, and they are loving it, that we think could actually have global impact. I can't talk about it now because it's not developed enough yet, but I'll be presenting this in new talks in the future, and yeah, hope to present it then. So anyways, guys, that's it from me. I hope you've sort of taken a little bit away from this talk on how you can go about essentially increasing your network to allow for these ideas to take form and take shape. And yeah, if you'd like to reach out to me, feel free to reach out via any one of the links that's currently on the screen. Cheers.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time this morning, Paul. Really love what you're doing with this product. I think that's fantastic for the people that are going to need that the most.
Yeah, cool. Cheers, JT.
I've just noticed that after many, many technical difficulties, we have got the man himself, Mr. Jeff Holland, has joined us online as a presenter. Can we cut over? There he is. Look at that smiling face.
Yes.
Hey, Jeff.
It turns out technology is not my strong point in any regard, because I spent literally the last hour and 15 minutes trying to figure out how to join a Teams meeting. But we got it. We made it. I'm here. And now I can finally let some folks appreciate my beautiful Sydney appreciation. And JT, for you, your inspirational shirt. So
my man,
I wanted to come spend some time with this community, primarily for those two reasons. But I was able to listen into the AMA earlier and hear those answers and be able to watch bits of that presentation too while I wasn't rebooting my machine. So hello, everyone. Thanks for letting me crash the party for a bit. Just wanted to say hi.
Awesome. We're super stoked to have you here. I think I mentioned in an email that you've been here a couple of times in the last year to speak. And I'm speaking for all of Australia when I say that you're basically an honorary Australian now.
Is this recorded? Is this community event recorded? Because I'm pretty sure that holds up.
It's also what that means for you, Jeff, is you've just got to start calling everybody mate.
Oh, great! Yeah, and just being
rating for everybody.
Yeah. I already practice eating a bit of Vegemite once every week, especially today. I'll be presenting at 2 in the morning, my time, so to wake me up, to really bolt those senses awake. I'm just going to get some toast, put a little bit of Vegemite on it. Boom, done.
So if you know Dave from the Visual Studio team, Dave's trick, which I don't know, I'm probably going to get in trouble for telling people this. Dave actually takes a spoonful of Vegemite and then just kind of licks it like a popsicle ice block type of thing to give him just that zesty little zing. So there you go, hot Aussie tip for you there, Jeff. And I think there's been a few questions in the Q&A aimed at you as well, Jeff, and I think you're rapidly trying to answer those as well. So we really appreciate that.
Sure, yeah. And I'm looking at the chat. It looks like we might have some time before our next one. I don't want to eat into the prepared content either, but I'm happy to answer any of those here if we didn't already push them through.
I suspect we'll have time to jump back to those for sure. But I do have a question for you, Jeff. Do you like pinball?
I love pinball, and I love AI pinball the most.
Oh yeah, AI pinball is the best pinball. I'm really excited about this next chat, mostly because I just get to talk more. But we're going to delve a little bit deeper into the AI pinball machine. As I mentioned at the top of the segment, if you bumped into us at an event over the last, sort of before everything stopped being live events, if you bumped into us over the last 6 to 9 months, you would have seen the pinball machine that we took around to a number of events. And additionally, Jack Skinner was demoing this live from the Sydney reactor yesterday, where we've got it set up in its new permanent home. So what we want to do today is give you a little bit of background on this. Why did we build it? What does it do? How does it work? That sort of thing. I'm going to give you a little bit of the why up front. So, as I said earlier, sort of part of our job is how do we help developers do cool stuff on Azure? And maybe the tricky part of that is how do we get people's attention in the first place? And so a big part of our role is we spend a lot of time at live events. We're very lucky to have the power of Microsoft to push behind those events and be able to show up and meet and greet and chat to a whole range of people in the technology industry. And the trick, if you've ever been to a live event and there's an expo hall, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. There's a lot of moving parts and there's usually a lot of giveaways. So how do you draw people in? And our answer to that was, well, everybody loves pinball. It's got this great retro kind of vibe to it. So what can we do with that? And how, more importantly, how do we create some sort of meaningful message? And the initial idea of this, and again, this is one of those things that I'm going to say, which is completely off script, and I may get in trouble for. One of our broader team members came up with the initial idea for this while he was in the shower in a hotel in Sydney. So shout out if you're out there watching, Josh. Now everybody knows that you do your best work while you're in the shower. But Josh sort of had this idea of how can we help demonstrate the idea of let's take an older, aging physical asset and let's augment that and let's soup it up with a bit of technology. What we didn't want to do is we didn't want to gut the thing and change a whole bunch of the internals. We wanted it to be a functional, playable pinball machine. So we thought, cool, let's build some stuff around it. And you'll see in the picture of the slide that's up there, there's sort of a frame around this machine. It's got a couple of webcams on it. And then what you can't see is inside the actual only modifications that we did make is it's got a Raspberry Pi inside, which allows it to effectively close the circuits that control the plunger and the flippers. And then it learns to play basically from first principles. And we would roll this out at events. Our initial plan was that we would bring this to events and we would have it fully trained and it would be amazing and people would verse against it and they would get their butts kicked by the machine. What we found almost by accident is that people are much more interested in the guts of how it works and how it grows over time. So we started taking this to events and starting it from scratch each time, and then people would come back and sort of see it progress and learn and grow over the course of the day. And it ended up being really interesting. We learned a lot of really fascinating stuff from it. I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Simon, who's been doing a lot of the heavy lifting behind the scenes to produce the content today. Simon, over to you to give us a bit of a technical overview of how the pinball machine works and how it all hangs together. Simon, I think you might be on mute, mate.
We are. Everyone wants to hear my voice. That helps if I unmute myself. Got to have one of those in every meeting. Anyway, thanks JT for the great background on how this all hangs together. Matt, if we can just go back to the previous slide for 2 seconds. There we are. Thank you very much. So before we start, just want to acknowledge Elliot Wood, who's a member of the team that JT and I are on, for doing a lot of the legwork in getting the AI pinball up and running. So, you know, without him, we wouldn't have had such a great experience. So I want to acknowledge that. He unfortunately can't present with us today, but if you've got questions, please put them in the Q&A and we'll be able to route them appropriately. Next slide, please, Matt. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how reinforcement learning works. Reinforcement learning is one of the 3 types of machine learning that we have out there today. So we have supervised and unsupervised and reinforcement learning. And in many ways, reinforcement learning is the newest and most exciting type of machine learning as it works through trial and error. Unlike the supervised and unsupervised learning, reinforcement learning is well suited to use in cases where you have little or no data to use for training the model, or you have an environment that's really fuzzy and has lots of change happening all the time. This is, you know, that idea of things changing and not being static is one of the reasons that reinforcement learning is also really popular in AI development for games. And as you see, that played a part in what we've done with the pinball machine. So the way it works, if we look at the diagram that's here on the screen, for all intents, we're going to call our reinforcement model, we're going to call it a brain. So the brain is given a set of actions it can perform into a simulated or physical environment. So if it's a game, it's going to be a simulated environment, and for what we did with the pinball machine, it's a physical environment. And then after that action has been performed in the environment, the brain receives back a report of the state of the environment, along with a reward that tells the brain how well the action performed. And then basically that continues cyclically over time. Theoretically, the brain gets better and better to the point that it should outperform humans when it's doing a similar exercise. Next slide, please, Matt. So let's look at how we made this work for the pinball machine. We started by giving the brain a list of actions it could perform in the environment, which is shown here on the right of the screen. So this list started with do nothing, which is take no action, along with the ability to raise and lower the left and right flipper. So they were individual actions. So you could raise the flipper and hold it up, or lower it down and leave it lowered, to firing the plunger to launch the ball onto the playing surface, or to push the start button to actually start a new game. So the machine really was enabled to play itself, as it were. If you could just do the next transition, Matt, please. So the first step is the brain selects an action based on the maximum reward from its experience. So in the case where it doesn't have any experience, so it's just started playing or it's only played a few rounds, what it does is it basically chooses one at random and injects that into the environment to see what happens. Next one, Matt, please. The action is sent into the environment, which in our case started off as a simulated pinball machine, which we'll have a look at in a minute, but which we then ended up integrating into a physical environment. So that action is sent via the hardware that we'll talk about in a second into the physical machine. Next one, thanks, Matt. The pinball machine is observed by a camera that we have connected to a convolutional neural network, or CNN, which allows us to take the pixels from that image and turn them into something that the brain can understand. The environment state is then passed back into the algorithm. Next one, thanks, Matt. The resulting state is assigned a reward between 0 and 1, denoting how well the move performed. We also used OCR, which you can see there's a scoreboard there on the left-hand side. We used OCR to extract the score off of the backboard of the pinball machine and convert that into part of the reward scheme. So the bigger the score, the bigger the reward that was passed back into the brain. And then over time, so you can see there the tensor board graphs showing you the performance of the brain. Over time, we should see that the brain continues to improve as it sees more situations and learns how to handle them. All right, next slide, please, Matt. So this is the hardware view of how everything hangs together. On the bottom left, you can see the underside of a playing surface, which shows you what a 1990s electronics pinball machine looks like when you pull up the tabletop. As an interesting aside, the main processor board that runs this whole game is actually an Intel 8086. So it gives you a feel for how old the game actually is. And the 8086 is not powerful enough even to run the audio for the game, which runs on a completely separate subboard that's attached to the 8086 to do all the audio. What we did in order to be able to allow our brain to play the game is we augmented the electronics by inserting a Raspberry Pi into the machine that allowed us to wire up the flippers and the buttons on the game to our brain. Buttons on these tables are just spring-loaded contact points, which means that we could hook right into the wiring for those contact points and then attach them to the Raspberry Pi. The great thing was, by doing this, actually we could flip between having the brain play the game and humans playing the game. And I can tell you that the events that I was at, a lot of people played the game. All of this Raspberry Pi tech is backhauled into an IoT edge device that was shipped attached to the frame that JT mentioned earlier. That edge device is running the brain that controls the gameplay, which is then using the Raspberry Pi to send the commands into the playing surface. The device has also got two cameras attached to it, one being a top-down camera to see the playing surface and one being a side-facing camera to read the playing board. And those cameras provide the necessary feedback into the brain running on the box so that it can figure out what happened when it played the episode that it just played. As well as having our brain running on this device, we actually built a whole IoT-enabled backend for it where we could send episode length up into an Azure IoT hub, and then off the back of those results, send some messages back down into a couple of Raspberry Pis running on sites where we're using Azure Functions, listening to an IoT hub up in Azure to drive that based on what was happening on the playing surface, and then build a Power BI report to show you the average episode length for humans versus the average episode length for the AI. So if you were lucky enough to see that at some of the earlier events, you would have seen the whole end-to-end solution. A lot of folks saw the table and the brain, but they didn't get to see a whole bunch of the other stuff. All right, next slide, please, Matt. So just want to talk about the approach to training at scale. You know, you always should try and start with a simulation first if you can. Clearly building a physical representation of an environment, sometimes it's not going to be a realistic one. And actually it's what we had to do because we did a proof of concept first using this training at scale approach to effectively justify to our boss why they should spend the money to allow us to buy a pinball machine. Because, you know, as techies, we'd all love to be able to go to our boss and say, hey, I want to buy a pinball machine. I've got this really great idea. And the first thing the boss is going to say is, well, I need a bit more than you've just got a great idea. So definitely need to start with the simulation. So what we did is we took Unity Pinball Table Simulator, or we chose a Unity pinball game simulator. We deployed it onto an Azure VM that had enough grunt on it that we could actually take that simulated game and we could run 10 games simultaneously and have them observed by our brain. So that basically we could do parallel training with those multiple instances of the board, which clearly we couldn't do with 10 physical pinball tables. It would take far longer than and far more money than we actually had to get this off the ground. You could certainly take this approach further, and we've got like a proof of concept diagram on the screen here where you could use the Azure Machine Learning Service and batch computing capabilities that we have in Azure to really scale out that training and take what we effectively ran on a single beefy VM and run it across multiple nodes in a batch. The framework we selected to build out the core of our solution was great because it allowed us to utilize TensorFlow, but with a programming language that the whole team was familiar with, which was unsurprisingly .NET. And you know, that's part of the reason that we selected the Unity engine here, is because it uses C# as its primary scripting and development language. It was a really familiar environment, and the ML agent stuff, which I'll talk a bit more about next, really allowed us to ramp up the development of this without having to go away and learn new programming languages. I think there's an interesting story in the early stages of doing this. Elliot recounts a great story of one of the problems with this sort of game is that you only have a small number of inputs. You basically have a flipper that you can flip up and down. And when you first turn on a brain in this environment, its natural habit is to continue to try to do everything. So you end up with flippers flapping around like wings on a bird. Apart from wearing motors out in the board really quickly, it's also not an effective way to play the game, right? And to stop that from happening, what Elliot did was he introduced a punishment into the environment that basically said, if you're flipping too much, each time you flip, you get a small negative reward. And then if the cumulative amount of those small negative rewards outweighs the value of the actual reward from a score or doing some move, then that's a punishment and it's a negative output. So the model should learn, or the brain should learn, to do that less often. Now, the problem with that is that when this was in development, one evening, Elliot forgot to reset one of the variables that was managing those punishments, and effectively ended up that everything that the brain did while he left the machine playing overnight resulted in a massive punishment. And in the morning when Elliot came back to the table, literally the flippers were just sort of twitching just a little bit, but actually nothing happened anymore because the model had gotten to the point where it had achieved learned helplessness. So it thought, much like Whopper did in the movie War Games, if you've ever seen it, it got to the end of doing all of the things that it tried, and it realized that actually the best way to get a reward was just not to play at all, which is clearly not what we wanted for our event. So that brain was archived and put off to one side, and we started again. All right, next slide, Matt, and then we're almost done.
I'm so glad I'm not on camera right now, because that story always leaves me with sort of tears in my eyes laughing about this poor depressed pinball machine. It's just like, what is the point of life?
So you will have seen that we worked quite heavily with Unity, and in particular we used their ML agents technology at the core of our solution. If you're in this space, you will have seen it. If you're not, I'll let you know that in April this year, the Unity team announced that ML agents hit its 1.0 stable release. So if you're interested in using this sort of technology in your solutions, there's now a stable version that you can go and use. But to be honest, for the usage we were making of it, the in development version at the time was more than sufficient. ML agents makes it really straightforward for developers to get started with reinforcement learning in .NET, so you don't have to go and learn something else. And at its core, you have the idea of an agent, which you can see here represented on the right-hand side in C#. And effectively, you have to implement 4 methods to implement an agent. So firstly, you're telling the brain what it can observe, with the vectors being the numbers or a visual observation resulting from the camera feed. You then give the agent a set of actions. So that's what we saw earlier in the presentation, where we had do nothing to push start button. And the agent will select one of those actions at random at first, but over time it should get to the point where it will learn to call one of those actions specifically based on observations. And then over time, we should see that as the agent selects an action, it should get better and better at choosing the right action based on what it's just observed. The agent is rewarded after it performs an action, which gives it a number between -1 and 1, which over time will help the brain learn the sorts of actions that it should be taking. And then finally, the last method is when your agent's finished doing the work that it needs to do, you just need to go through and reset everything to make sure that each action isn't just accumulating more and more reward in the brain. All right, next slide, please, Matt. So that's pretty much everything I've got to cover. If there's any questions, and I can see there's some questions in the Q&A, so I'm just going to open up the Q&A here. As I said, really want to acknowledge Elliot for his part in this, because we definitely appreciate the long hours he put into panel beating this tech into the state that it was in. So let's see if we've got any questions in here specifically about pinball machine.
We call Elliot the chief pinball architect for a reason.
Yeah, rightly so. Look, I don't see any specific questions related to pinball machine. So, folks, there'll be some follow-up links at the end of this presentation. JT, I'm going to hand over to you to wrap up today's session and let people know how they can enter into the swag prize draw. So thanks a lot for having me, folks. Hopefully I'll see you around again shortly. Back to you, JT.
Thank you very much, Simon. It's swag time. But before we get to the end of all of this, because this is the wrap. It's over before we even knew it. I just want to do a real quick recap of what everybody spoke about, just so you can remember, because this will become relevant in a moment. So right at the top of the session, we started with Azita and Kat from Girl Geek Sydney, running us through how their community works, the great stuff that they're doing there, and the app that they built to help community members gain insights into areas of development for their soft skills. And if you want to find more out about that, I believe that there's a bunch of Girl Geek details on the screen for you right now. Next, we had our developer leads from our Azure Tech communities from right around Australia, Perth, Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne, where it's a very rainy day. And some great questions from people there around how do you balance community commitments with your day jobs? How do we get started as speakers? Again, if you're based in any of these cities, or even now while they're online and you're interested in talking or presenting, please reach out to the guys that run this. I spend a lot of time, Simon spends a lot of time, and Elliot spends a lot of time with these people. They're doing some fantastic stuff out in the community. So get in touch. That'll be really cool. If you watched Satya's keynote yesterday, one of the things that he said was that as developers, we're in a great place to help society in the situation it finds itself in today, and as it rebuilds into the future. So I think the thing that really resonated for me from the Claimy presentation with Paul is using his existing IP, hosting that on Azure, getting something stood up in the modern cloud so that we can empower Australians and have a positive impact really quickly. If you want to know more about Claimy or Paul, check out the details up on the screen now. And then finally, I hope you are all excited about the pinball machine. It's something that, you know, as part of this team, I'm really proud of the work that's gone into this. I think it's really, really interesting. It's definitely a team effort, but also a huge shout out to Elliot, who did an incredible amount of work to get this all pulled together. And if you're looking for more information about how that works, we've got a blog post available. There's also some case studies around how does this apply in the real world? What does it look like to augment physical assets, particularly older ones, and how do you bring them into the technical world? Final opportunity here, I think, you know, I've been on screen all day, so my ego is pleased with that. I would like to point out one thing, and that is there is only one person who has beaten the AI's highest score, one human player. And we've had a lot of players come through this machine, as Simon said, like a lot of people have had a crack at it. There's one person and one person only. And if I don't know if they're going back to the live stream today, but if you have a look at the high scoreboard as that flashes by, there's a great big JT right there. On that note, to wrap up, our team of Elliot, Simon and myself, we put out a newsletter that comes out once a month that covers a whole bunch of things that are relevant for developers. We try to really drive some Australian focused content in there, along with the best of a bunch of content from around the world, as well as details on upcoming events and things like that that you might find interesting. If you'd like to sign up, we've got a link on the screen for getting on board with that. And finally, some swag. We're giving away for 20 Aussie viewers, because we've got to pay for postage, some amazing swag packs. They're worth it. All you have to do is enter. There's a short quiz. I hope you were paying attention across the whole event because the quiz is relevant to that. The link's on the screen. It's going to be available for the next 30 minutes after this session finishes. So make sure you jump in and edit there. I'm not sure if one of the questions is how many times I referred to someone as mate, but I do understand that around the world there actually was a drinking game, and I think there are some people that are possibly suffering from some sort of alcohol poisoning as a result of that. So that's what's happening in Australia for developers. A massive thank you to all our presenters who spent time to join us this morning. Another huge shout out to our man with the serverless plan, Mr. Jeff Holland, joining us from Corp. He's got a few more sessions running in build. Make sure you get along to those. Make sure that you check out the live stream that we're running from Australia. Our cloud advocates, Aaron Powell and Sonia Cuff, are hosting that. There's a bunch of great guests and a bunch of great content. Jeff, did you have anything to wrap up? What's your favorite session been this build?
Not watching you win pinball, that's for sure. No, I actually, so I mentioned the Hanselman session, which I love, but Daniel Ross' session on Blazor was quite incredible. So I had a lot of fun watching and tuning into that one. And yeah, I guess the only other thing I'll say, because I know we're wrapping up, just huge, like honest, sincere appreciation for this community. I've talked to JT, I've talked to Simon, I've talked to many of you about this before. Daniel, Sam, Martin, all you on the folks on the phone and in the call. There's something really special about the Australia community, how they're leveraging cloud tech, but also how they're sharing it with others. And that's why I've got the poster on the board. That's why I always try to make an effort to come. So it means a ton from me, from our whole team up here. We see that, we appreciate that. And so thank you very much. Like I just want to share that too. A slight thanks to JT and Simon and to all the folks who helped run this too, but sincere thank you to everyone here. Hope you're enjoying the conference, and yeah, feel free to reach out at any time. I'm more than happy to help.
Thanks, Jeff. We love having you here. You are welcome back anytime. So with that all out of the way, we hope you've enjoyed it today. We're looking forward to seeing you all again next time we do something virtual or something in person. Make sure you check out a bunch of sessions from Build 2020. It's great that we've got stuff in our time zone at last. And finally, don't forget, write code, not slogans. Peace out, everybody.